crush with the couch on a whim. A little fluffy crazy cat who don't play nice with the kids. You're a danger floof. But I'll keep it safe where you poop. You're an unnatural beast with natural litter under your feet, yeah. At least in your box it's saying no more dust all over the place. Everybody without clay, say meow. World's best cat litter for the world's best cat.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Rise up! Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root for PowersWire.com, the USA Today NFL wire site that covers Arizona Cardinals. We're episode 692, as we're closing in on our 700th episode of the show that we've been doing since 2013. Joining me in this episode is Seth Cox, my co-host from RevengeOfTheBirds.com, SB Nation's Arizona Cardinals site, and we got an extra bonus. You guys got a bonus episode. I hope you've downloaded and listened to that. The 2025 betting season preview with Covers.com's Jason Logan. Seth and I, since we're normally our Tuesday show is a review of the previous game, and then we will do our preview of the upcoming game later on in the week, but we don't have a game to preview, Seth, so I guess this is going to serve as our 2025 season preview, will it not?
Yeah, and it's exciting, man. I mean, we're excited. This is a season where we're hoping to see it all come together, health permitting, to key players, and we're going to see the product get to what we think it can become under Monty Ossenfort and Jonathan Gannon, and see the vision kind of start to create the fruit. Even though we're very happy with what we've seen through year 1 and 2, this will be the next step. And it's interesting to think about this, but Theo Mackey, I believe, of AZ Central, right, tweeted out something last week that I thought was interesting, and it's Cardinals draft class ranks since 2020, right, based on snap indices from over the cap. 2020 30th, 2021 26th, 2022 31st, and then the last 2 years they're 8th and 9th. So that's kind of what we've been thinking, right? Like, looking at, they're building it, and you and I have said this over and over again, they're building it the right way. It doesn't mean it's going to work. And as Arizona Cardinals fans, we know that it's not a guarantee that anything's going to work, because it's worked for 5 seasons since they moved to the Valley. But they're building it to be something that has longevity and can be of a contender status every single year. And ultimately, as fans of a starved organization, especially in terms of not just wins but competitiveness, right? That's all we've wanted. And maybe in year, maybe in 2028, right, we're going, okay, we're tired of the playoffs, they got to take the next step. But at that point, it would just be nice to be in the playoffs for 3 straight years, and then have those high, those first class fan problems that we've never experienced. I mean, think about it, Jess. All these years, back-to-back playoffs twice. That's it. Like they don't go to the playoffs 3 years in a row. They're not true playoff team 3 years in a row. It's never happened in the Valley. And so, this would be obviously the first step, the baby step, and that's what the expectation is now into being a year in and year out playoff contender. And so, that's the excitement that you and I go in with, talking tonight and especially Sunday.
And in this episode, we want to talk about what a successful season looks like for us. What are there actually any hot seats in terms of coaches, players, things like that? We're going to talk about what Kyler Murray needs to be this year. We're going to look at what we believe the floor and ceiling for this team is and give our predictions, not necessarily game by game, because we've done that, but what do we predict for the season? And then we'll kind of go over some stat projections. What do we expect to see from different players in 2025? So starting off, what a successful season looks like this year. A lot of people are saying playoffs or bust. Is that right, in your opinion, to progress to what they need to do and go? We've talked about the progression of this team under Jonathan Gannon and Monty Austin-Fort, where they went from in 2022, where they were a 4-win dumpster fire. 2022 was a disaster of a season. It was a 4-win dumpster fire of a team. Then Jonathan Gannon takes over 2023. They do not improve in wins, but they do improve in quality. They went from a dumpster fire to a good, bad team, as we said many times that year. They were a good, bad team. They were a bad team, but they did good if you had to rank all the bad teams, they played better than all the bad teams. Last year, they were a perfectly mediocre team. They were, honestly, because they beat teams who didn't make the playoffs. And with the exception of their inexcusable loss to the Carolina Panthers last year, all 8 of their 9 losses came against teams with 10 or more wins. They lost to playoff teams. They lost to the Seattle Seahawks twice, who won 10 games. And that was basically it. They were nearly good enough to be a playoff team and look like they could be, but they weren't good enough. And so for this year, is it fair? Is it fair, or is it not quite fair to say playoffs or bust for this team?
Yeah, I think they have to be, right? Because like you said, they were on the precipice last year, and their losses were to teams that ended up making the playoffs, obviously sans the Carolina game, right? And so that was the game. You look at everything else, that was the game, because losing to Seattle, losing to Minnesota, all those other teams, they were fine. It was that overtime loss to Carolina that really kind of was the backbreaker. And we can talk about all these other games and things and stuff, things that happened, but they didn't beat that team when they had to maintain their pace for where they were headed. So that was, that's last year. Now you look at this year, and to build upon that, to build upon what they were, it has to be a team that takes that next step and then is a playoff team, right there. You said it, and obviously we don't know off hand, right? But you look at it, New Orleans, Carolina, Tennessee, Indy, these teams, Jacksonville, you could even put teams like the Falcons, the 49ers, and the Rams. Those are all teams that you should look at and say that's a winner, or at worst a coin flip, right? And then you look at other teams like the Packers, with Micah Parsons added. Oh, I forgot the Cowboys. That should be a win. Anyways, like the Packers, with Micah Parsons added. Like the Seahawks, the Niners, the Buccaneers, the Rams, the Texans and the Bengals. Like those are games that you should be excited to watch your team play in, not dreading, oh man, I do not like, this is not the week I want to cover this team, right? Like, and how many years and how many times have we done that? Like where it's just like, ugh, I do not want to be covering the Cardinals when they play, the
2023 game against the Ravens, or
right, or
Yeah.
the Niners in 2023 and those teams, right? You're like, I don't want to watch this team get their brains beat in. Like, no, thank you.
No. So, but I'm going to pose this question. I'm nearly of the expectation of playoffs per bus, but what if this is a 10-7 team who just misses the playoffs? Would that mean a bust, or would that be fine? Like,
I think
could you look at going from 8 to 10 wins, but because of a competitive NFC, because of a competitive NFC West, if you're 10-7 but miss the playoffs, is that a failure every year?
No, I don't think so. And I think that's, the little caveats that we give to all situations, right? And you look at and you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. But I mean, you look at, we've always kind of based it off of the Detroit Lions. Sorry, I had a brain fart on who, as I'm literally staring at at their team. But we've always kind of based off the Detroit Lions, right? And like, Detroit had that year 3 jump from 9 to 12 wins, right? And they were first in the NFC North and kind of surprised everybody a little bit. Like, people thought they were going to be good, but again, you go back, everybody expected Green Bay to still be the tops on that in that division, and they kind of struggled that year with Love and LaFleur. Remember, that was the year of like, oh, will they or won't they with LaFleur at the end of the season? And then they just beat the brakes off of the Cowboys in the playoffs and almost upset the 49ers in the division. And people are like, oh, okay, they're a good team, right? Like, they're a good team. And so, that's kind of what you look at, is whether it's that the Lions, and we've always compared it to the Lions. Why? Well, because the Lions are the other moribund franchise, right? Like,
yes. And they've also they've done that progression that we're seeing with the Cardinals. If they're kind of following that arc.
Yeah, and so that's why I think we look at playoffs for bust. But yeah, if they go 10-7, and miss the playoffs, it would be disappointing, and we'll go back and we'll say, oh, I can't believe they lost to Carolina, right? Or can't believe,
dear Lord, please no.
Whatever the team is that didn't make the playoffs that they lost to, that we're like, ugh, that's the game. And so, like, that's how you have to look at it. So so that's how, I'm not overly like, oh, this season's a failure if they go 10-7. But like, I will tell you, like, if they're sitting at, let's say, 9-4, and they finish 1-3, that's definitely one of those where you go,
that'll continue the narrative, and the schedule lines up for them to falter late again. It does. They've got those 6 games, the last 6 games of the season, where they go Bucks, Rams, Texans, Falcons, Bengals, and Rams. And so you've got 4 teams who were in the playoffs last year and were division winners, and then 2 teams in the Falcons and the Bengals who were in the playoff mix until week 18. So that's going to be hard. And for the sake of Kyler Murray and the Cardinals, the whole narrative of finishing, that would be, I think, yeah, that 10-7 missing the playoffs, but falling apart late in the year, I don't like that. Would not feel like a success of a season, even if it means 10 wins. So, but honestly, the other question is there anyone on a hot seat this year? And I say no, because even if they miss the playoffs, and even if they collapse late and they finish 10-7, they have a late collapse and they miss the playoffs, I don't think there's any coaches on the hot seat. Like, some people, like I've seen talking about, Jonathan Gannon, if they, they might move. Like, no, like, barring a disaster, dumpster fire of the season, there's nothing about the coordinators or head coach that would suggest that they haven't fallen short of expectations yet, right? So if this year they fall apart late, or they miss the playoffs, or they're 9-8 or 8-9, I don't think they're going to clean house. But I think then what happens is, because it's the first year they miss expectations or fall short, 2026 then becomes the hot seat year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And so, you look at it, and I've seen experts on the X's and the tweets that if they don't, that this is Kyler Murray's last year. And I'm like, maybe it is. Like, if he's the problem, then maybe it is. But I know a lot of people are like, oh, he's mid, he's this, and I know we're going to get to that, but it's like, have you guys looked around the league? Like,
a good old Mike Jurecki saying Jacoby Brissett's going to be the starter next year. Dear Lord, if that happens, please, can we?
Well,
can we not?
at least
can we not.
At least we know that they're tanking for a quarterback for the new regime in 2027, right? Like, at least we know that they're just going through it, and they're just like, it's over anyway. So.
So let's move on then. So coming up next on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the Best Our Cardinals talk, and let's talk about Kyler Murray. How good does he need to be in 2025? That's coming up next on Rise of Sierra. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast, the Best Our Cardinals talk on the web. Now talking about Kyler Murray. How good do you think he has to be this year for, well, I guess there's two levels to it. For fans to be satisfied, one, and two, for the Cardinals to not move on from him? How good does he need to be this year?
I've come to realize that there's really nothing that can happen, barring a deep playoff run, that'll ever really satiate the Cardinals fan base. And the irony behind that being that, their favorite quarterbacks, a lot of their favorite quarterback, Carson Palmer, has one playoff win as a Cardinal, and and they look at that and they go, second best quarterback ever after Kurt Warner. And it's like, okay, whatever you say, guys. Like people just want, I don't know what people want, honestly. Like, that's what makes me laugh is that I don't think fans know what they want. They look at things and they go, I want Carson Palmer. It's like, all right, so you want the guy that implodes in the big game, like 5 interceptions in the NFC Championship game, and the team's best chance to ever win a title. Like, so I don't think you're ever gonna placate or make the fans happy. But from a keeping him standpoint, from that nature, I think like you said, 10+ wins. Not fading down the stretch. Those are the first two things. I think continuing to be productive like he has been. I mean, I know people want more, and you and I have talked about it quite a bit. We're fine. If they're a team that has the quarterback that only throws 24, 25 touchdowns, but they're a top 10 offense of points per game, why would we care? Like, that's always been my thing, right? Like, who cares where the touchdowns come from if they're scoring points? Like, so that's the way I look at it. I would like to see him reduce the interceptions this year,
right?
And so in that case, if he's, I would like to see his interception rate, I guess is the best way to put it. But like, I would love to see his interception rate under 2%. I know it was at a flat 2%, which is still very good, by the way. Like,
which is historically, especially for Cardinals, that's like the lowest in team history, basically.
Right. And so I would like to see that. And again, I'd just like to see him continue to play at a more consistent level. Like, that's the one thing I've always said, right? Is I don't need the guy to be a top 3 quarterback, but I also don't want to see a guy that's a sub top 20 quarterback. Like, and that's where you end up getting that he's a top 12 to 14 quarterback in the NFL. It's like, hey, just be a consistent top 11 quarterback. Like, just be in that 8 to 11 range every week. And obviously you'll have a game where it's a bad game like everybody does, right? But you'll have a bad game and you can have a great game to counteract that. But if you're consistently, producing top 8 to 11 quarterback weeks every single week, then that's better than having that best quarterback in the league one week and a guy that you are like, does he even know what he's doing, in another week? So that's where I'm at for him more than anything.
And interestingly enough, I think the turnover numbers, I think it's when the turnovers happen, because the fact that he had 8, because 11 interceptions in a season, not terrible. It's not terrible. The problem was his 8 in the final 7 games. So if 3 of those final 8 interceptions had come before the bye, if he had had 6 interceptions in the first 10 games and they were 6-4, right?
Right.
We'd be talking much differently about Kyler this year if he had only had 5 interceptions in the final 7 games of the year. And maybe we wouldn't be looking at him as, it wouldn't be he choked, he just didn't step up enough. And because now the narrative is beginning to be that he doesn't, and he makes mistakes, and like when in its high leverage situations he plays poorly, and that hasn't been the case in his career. But we've also seen when they go from playing loose to playing in the lead, like division wise, they fade. And when they're in a position to put something away, they fade. And so I guess that's kind of what we want to see, is definitely that consistent. We want to see flashes. We want to see flashes of what he's capable of. And we've seen flashes. He's a special quarterback, one that can take a team and basically will a team to win on his shoulders, very much like Josh Allen, just in a different way. And I think it would just the consistency, I think, is what's super important. There's going to be some play. There's going to be some, even if the Cardinals won the Super Bowl, because we know if they won the Super Bowl, Kyler probably wouldn't have gaudy numbers because of the way they play offense, the way they play defense. And even if they won the Super Bowl, Kyler wouldn't get credit for a segment of this fan base. He wouldn't get credit for it. It would be the run game. It would be the defense. It would be the coaching. It would be winning the Super Bowl in spite of Kyler.
Well, and that's the thing too, is like there's a segment of the fan base that will never, like I said, will never care. And so it doesn't matter. I mean, there are people that literally still bring up the playoffs. They're like, oh, he quit on the team. It's like, guys, I promise you, this organization, all these people would not be voting him a team captain and putting him up there on the way that they do if there was an actual issue, right? So like it's just a silly thing sometimes, but it is what it is. Fans have their reasoning for how they feel about things, and some make sense, some don't. And like I said, I've always said the same thing, right? Especially about Kyler. It's like, if you want to move on, I'm happy to move on. Just like show me the move that is a positive upward movement and not like reduction back to the Arizona Cardinals. And people will be like, well, you go draft somebody. Okay, who do you draft? Like what quarterback has this team drafted and developed? Because Kyler Murray's it. So like, where's that coming from? Oh, you go get a veteran. Okay, yep. So super easy. That's why teams just do it every year, right? They go find a veteran.
Cousins.
Yeah, exactly. and that's who it would be, right? Like it would be Kirk Cousins. It would be Dak Prescott after being cut from the Cowboys.
Russell Wilson.
Right? Or God forbid, Aaron Rodgers, right?
Oh,
hey, but at least if it was like Rodgers or Russell Wilson, we would have something to write about for like.
Yes, we would. Oh, Jameis would be fun.
Oh, geez, yeah, right. And wouldn't that be the guy that fans would want? 500 yards, 4 touchdowns, and they lose, and be like, yeah, but it's not his fault. Yeah,
Yeah, but he threw 3 interceptions.
Right. No, it is like it's great that he threw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, but also he was the reason that he had to throw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns to make it a 42-28 game, right?
Oh, so that I'm hoping for that. I'm not hoping for that. I'm hoping for a good Kyler year because that makes everything better. Coming up next on the Rise Up Sea Red podcast of Star Cardinals Talk on the Web, let's talk about the floor and the ceiling of the team. Realistic floor, realistic ceiling, and our predictions. What do we think is going to happen? That's coming up next on Rise Up Sea Red. We're back on the Rise Up Sea Red podcast, the Best Star Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking about our 2025 Cardinals preview, the floor and the ceiling. I'm not like if this team stays relatively healthy. I'm not saying okay, Trey McBride gets hurt or Kyler Murray gets hurt, but an underachieving team and a slightly overachieving team. If things go right, if things go wrong, what do you believe is their floor and their ceiling for this year?
Obviously, like you said, sans any major injuries to any major player.
Right. We're talking general underperforming and general things going well.
I think their floor is 8 wins again. Like I just don't see a team that's going to lose more than they lost last year. And here's the thing, like you said, like we don't feel like anybody's on the hot seat, but like again, barring injury, if this team is a 6-win team, it's going to be really hard to keep everybody too, right? Like changes would have to happen again, barring injuries, in that sense. So that's, I would say 8 wins again, which to us would be underachieving, right? Like it would be like, yes. Gosh, that they didn't take that next step. Like, is it time to move on? Like what's the move? Like, how do you take that next step? And things of that nature. So that would be my floor, because again, we're not talking, like you said, we're not talking injuries. If Kyler goes down, this is probably a 5-win team, maybe 6, because that's like Jacoby's best season, right? Like, so maybe that. But if you're healthy, if you're not missing any key impact players for long periods of time, I think you can get away with an 8-win team as like your base.
I would say something like 7-8 wins would be the floor for an underachieving team. Now, like things going well, I could see that. Because they play the NFC South and the AFC South, so I think their win total could be elevated more ceiling wise. But I see this team as things going well, 12-13 wins. Like if things really roll, I could see them winning 12-13 games. And while I think their potential ceiling is the Super Bowl, I'm not like, I think it's a deep playoff run, like NFC title game. They could make it to the NFC title game if everything went well. And while, the tip of the ceiling, I think they could, like, if everything went well, go to the Super Bowl. But basically, I think best case scenario, 12-13 wins. If everything goes well, they win a playoff game or 2.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think 13's high. I think if they win 13 games, we're gonna probably change our expectations a little bit, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think that is where we're at with this group right now. And you look at a lot of different things, right? You look at how they've grown as a club, as an organization, what the next step is. We've talked about that ad nauseum. So, when you look at it, and I've always said this, I think this is a 10-win team. And so when I say things like that, people go, well, shouldn't they do X, Y, or Z? And it's like, okay, I mean, ideally, yeah, that'd be great, right? But like, we'll kind of see. And then you go, and this has been my philosophy for what I mean. We've done this podcast for a while, so I've always said this, right? If they win, if they're a 10-win team, then to me their ceiling is 12 wins. And if we start talking 13 wins, we're like, holy crap, this is a really good team, right? Like this is borderline the best Cardinals team ever. And 13 and beyond, I guess we should say. And then if it's less than, or anything like that, we go, okay, well, this is what the issue is. So that's how I look at everything. Overall, I think this is a squad that is a 10-win team. And so I always say you go 2 up and 2 down, and that's where you're kind of going to fall most of the time. And so for this group, I think that's my ceiling, my floor, and how I look at this team overall.
And my prediction, I 10 is a reasonable, but I think this is going to be an 11-win team this year, 10/11 wins, and win a playoff game this year. Everything that we've seen, basically in my mind, nothing we've seen the last 2 years suggests that they're going to regress, or that they're not going to take a step forward. Now, could they win 11 games and lose a close game in the first round, or if they somehow won the division and lose in the division round, be one and done? That would still raise questions, but that would still be
the right step.
That's the right step. It's the right step. But because they've taken the steps that they have, and the roster has improved the way that it has, I believe they're going to take those steps. So I predict an 11-win team that wins one playoff game, and then after that, they're playing with house money. In my opinion, if they win 10 games and win a playoff game, I think that meets even I think that would meet even the most curmudgeon-y fan about what to expect. Like, so there's some people like, we need to expect more. No, we can't expect more right now. We've got to raise the floor of this franchise. Like we got to expect Super Bowls. No, please don't expect Super Bowls. We're not there. Like, if you want to raise the level, we've got to get them to consistently competitive. And we're not there yet.
No, not in the least.
And if you're going to do that, you're just going to be miserable. And then it's no fun to fall. It's no fun to hate the team that you love, right? I don't want to hate the team that I love, so I'm moving forward. I predict 11 wins. If they win 10, I see this as a 10-11 win team in the regular season, and they win a postseason game. And I think we can just eliminate all the old narratives about Kyler, about the Cardinals, that like we've seen in others. Like Randy Johnson finally got, like, when they won the title, but he was terrible in the postseason. He was a terrible postseason pitcher until 2001. But yeah, like let's go ahead and break all the old narratives and just go from there. That's what I want to see. I think they will break old narratives and kind of win over some of the doubters.
Yeah, and that would be ideal, right? Like, that would be the ideal way to see these things progress, and what we've talked about all together. And hopefully that's the next step, right? So we'll hope that as things happen, that they get to that point, and we'll be able to find this group, in a position where they are competing not just for the division, but for playoffs year in and year out. And that makes this fun. You just said it. I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I don't think anybody is ever going to look back and go, God, that World Series run by the Diamondbacks was terrible, right? Everybody loved it, and understandably so. And obviously we're just in the the next iteration of where they're at and things of that nature, right? Like, but I always ask people this, and I don't know how people feel, so maybe I'm wrong. I'm okay with that. But, like, wouldn't you prefer, like, consistently getting to the playoffs every year than one magical run that ends in the same way that all the other magical runs have always ended. Like, think about this town in general, right? There's one major sports championship ever, and that's obviously
That
the
was 24 years ago.
Yeah, that's
24 years ago.
That 2001 D-backs team. Like, so that's what I always say. Like, if the Diamondbacks won the World Series in 2023, nobody's going to ever ask to have that back, right? Like, nobody's going to be like, oh, I'd rather this team have been to the playoffs 8 straight years. No, nobody's going to say that. However, my point being, like, don't wish for one run and then like you said, and I think you hit the nail on the head, wish for a consistent winner that is always competitive, and then you truthfully do have a shot, right? Like, you look at it and you go, oh, every time these guys strap it up, they've got a shot to win, and they've got a shot to make a run in the playoffs. Like, that's how I always have looked at it. And I always go back to the Arians Cardinals, right? Bruce Arians Cardinals were built for a 3-year run. We all wanted it to be more, but the reality of the situation was between BA's health, Palmer's health, the age of the franchise, the underdeveloping of rookies, because BA didn't have time for that. It was a 3-year run, and probably the year that they should have won it, Carson got injured, and we know the history. Ryan Lindley, greatest playoff performance in Cardinals history, right? So that, you don't want to build that. You don't want to build like where you're just a contender for, realistically 1 year in that 3-year run. You want to build something that's like, you don't want to be dramatic and, not, and say, oh, I want to be the Steelers, where it doesn't matter that they're going to the playoffs every year, right? You just pencil the Steelers in. They could be the 1 seed, they could be the 2 seed, they could be the 7 seed, but they're going to be in the playoffs.
It would be great to get to the point where we're bored of the playoffs.
Exactly.
But until we're bored of the playoffs, we can't put expectations that high. We're not at bored of the play. We're not at the point where the Philadelphia Eagles fired Andy Reid because they just kept going to the playoffs.
and by the way, wouldn't that be great if you're like, we had to move on from JG and Kyler because like they just keep losing in the NFC Championship game or something of that nature. So that's how I look at this. Like, let's hope that they're building this right. That this is the first step in that. Like, hey, this is year in and year out, they're in the playoffs, and then we can start to complain about, golly, they just make the playoffs every year.
That would be great. That would be great. Coming up next on the Rise of Secret podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk. Let's look at some statistical projections. What do we see the players individually doing? That's coming up next on Rise of Secret. We're back on the Rise of Secret podcast, Mr. Cardinals talk on the web. We actually get to talk a little bit of props, because they have season props for players on FanDuel. And while that wasn't the direction we needed to go, I think it's a good way to go about that.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just like shooting at the stars, right? You're like, well, I think he's going to have this many. Yeah. So
Kyler Murray. And I'm like, and this is when I had Jason Logan on from covers.com. That was one of his best bets for this, was to take over his passing total, because it's only 3,375 yards and a half. And I'm guessing that projection is expecting missed time for injuries.
Right.
I 100% expect this year a healthy Kyler Murray is going to finally cross the 4,000 yard threshold. That's my prediction.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I mean, that 30, let's just call it 3,400 for easy conversation pieces. But like, I think he's going to clear 3,400 yards I don't want to say easily, but like that's going to be something he does in like week 15, right?
Yeah.
So, or game 15. Sorry, not I know week 15. So week 16 technically. So yeah, that's what I kind of look at, and I think that is a yes. And if you are thinking that he gets beyond 4,000 yards, like Jess says, and by the way, like I believe as well, plus 230 on FanDuel right now.
Ooh, that's nice. Total touchdowns. I know with Kyler, it's hard to peg just passing touchdowns, but how many touchdowns combined, passing and rushing, do you think he's going to go for this year?
You said it, man. Tough get for Kyler every year. You look at different things. His regular season passing touchdown over under is set at 20.5, and the overs plus money on FanDuel plus 100. So even on obviously, but like that's got to be thinking like he's gonna be hurt, and they're going to have to go to Jacoby for a heavy amount of time. I would take that over 20. Again, even with injuries, right? Like even with that type of situation and things of that nature, he's only got 2 seasons where he has not hit 20. That was 14 in 2022. In 11,
for both the ACL years.
Yeah,
that is 100% for the ACL. And me, I'm looking combined touchdowns. Like he's had over 30 once, and that was in 2020. I think this is the year. Like I'm going to say 32, 33 combined passing and rushing touchdowns, which is it's kind of I think that's the sweet spot where he's not being productive enough, but we know that this offense doesn't necessarily produce gaudy numbers, but I think he's going to hit about 32, 33 combined touchdowns.
Yeah, and I look at it. I think that this year, you mentioned obviously passing touchdowns, 20.5's low. His because they don't have 25 on this that I can find. So his next number would be 30 plus, is plus 500. So again, and that's just throwing touchdowns, so passing touchdowns, obviously. That's an interesting number. I think his total this year is going to be well into the 30s. I truly do. So I would look at it and say, and by the way, his over under is 4.5, and that's over 4.5 plus 122. So to Jess's kind of point, if you believe in that, and I don't, let me see.
So that's a good bet. I like the over 4.5 rushing touchdowns.
And I just want to see what you're allowed to do. I can spell, I promise. Hold on. You cannot parlay those. Okay. So you can't parlay those on FanDuel right now. But over 4.5, over 20.5, that would be 25 by my math skills, which is, there's always a 100% chance that that's inaccurate, but 25. So yeah, I think he clears that fairly regularly. And honestly, I wouldn't mind sprinkling plus 500 on 30 plus touchdowns this year.
Yeah, that wouldn't be bad. We look at James Conner. He's gone over 1,000 yards each of the last 2 years. His FanDuel total is 875.5. I think that one's like, even with an increased role from Trey Benson, I still think Conner is a 900-yard rusher this year.
Yeah, I think Conner, he honestly goes for over 1,000 again. And I was thinking about this the other day, right? Like even with Benson's statistical growth likely, it's gonna be one of those things that I think there's gonna be a lot of games where James gets 16 carries and Trey gets 12, right? And you see James with 80-ish yards on 16 carries, so roughly about about 5 yards a pop, right? And but then I think there will be games where it's rugged, it's hard hitting, and they just go, okay, this is the James game, right? Like, and so we'll see games where he gets into the 20s still, and he puts up over. So I think, I think his average per game, and again, 17 games makes this a lot. Like, we're not trying to dog on it by any means, but 17 games, you're talking 59 yards a game. I think he clears 1,000 again.
Although they would require him to
stay healthy.
He's never played a 17-game season.
No,
he's never not missed a game.
And I 1,000% understand that point, and would agree with that one critique, because that is the reality, right? Like, you can't bet him. And by the way, you can't parlay that either. So it just must be you can't parlay these individual stats. Silly. The other one for him, though, that's interesting is his over under touchdowns, and he's at 7.5.
Oh, that's a tough one. That one's tough because you've got Benson, you've got Harrison. You feel like McBride's lack of touchdowns feels anomalous, which means I think this year he's going to get 7-8 this year.
So here's the one, and I don't disagree with you, but here's the one thing I'll say. With the Arizona Cardinals, 2021, 15 touchdowns, 2022 in 13 games, 7 touchdowns, in 2023 in 13 games, 7 touchdowns. And by the way, that was without Kyler Murray for a massive chunk of those games. And then 2024, 8 touchdowns. So his, obviously that 15-year is the outlier in the sense. But I don't think it's unexpected to see him be at that 8 or 9 again, because that's what he consistently would be averaging. Now, again, he's only played at most 16 games. And we even know that in some of those games, right? Like it's a quarter or a half, right? But I do think he clears that 7.5 again, and that's -108 right now on FanDuel. They don't have anything for Trey. They do have Kyler Murray numbers though. So like if you're a super degenerate and you want to get like crazy, his over under rushings 475.5.
I like that's a really good line, but he's clearing it because he's going to use his legs more. But I think if things go as planned, that Benson is going to be more involved, and I see 900 for Connor, 600 for Benson, and so that will give them, like last year they had under 1,400 yards total between the two, rushing yards. And this year, that would put them at over 1,500 rushing yards between the two. I think what we kind of want to see is a combined 2,000 scrimmage yards from the two of them between rushing and receiving. And I think they had about 1,800, 1,850 last year between the two. And so increase whatever that looks like, about 1,500 rushing yards and about 2,000 to 2,200 total yards from scrimmage from those two is what I want to see. And I think that we can reasonably say that's going to be a good target to hit.
Yeah, I would agree.
We look at Marvin Harrison at 975.5. He's going for 1,000 this year. I think he's going to. That's the thing. Who do you think is going to be the, not the leader in receptions, but the leader in receiving yards? I think Marv is going to have more receiving yards, and that McBride will have more receptions.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
But 975, I like Marv for 1,000. But Trey, it's at 900.5. I think that's an easy over as well. because I think Marv will probably be about 1,100, and that McBride will probably be in the low 900s this year.
And you look at it, and the hard thing becomes, will Trey's his receptions that you kind of mentioned. Here's the thing. Don't you expect, and maybe that's the dangerous word, but don't you expect the targets to be relatively the same?
Roughly. I think if they're going to, like, it's hard not to, because he's always open. It's that's the thing. It's like the way when the Cardinals play, and like you're trying to get the ball to Harrison, but McBride's always open. That's the part that's hard. He's always open. But yeah, and I think last year if they had hit, if Kyler and Marv had hit on 3 or 4 more of those shots down the field, we're looking at 1,000-yard season for Harrison. And so, but I think we're going to get, and I think we're going to see more breakaway plays by Marv. And just by nature of more of that, the Trey's is going to drop a little bit. Like he's going to, is he going to go from 1,100 to 900? Maybe. It's like, it's hard for tight ends to put that. Like, look at George Kittle's numbers. Like he had the massive year, and then he didn't hit 1,000 again until like 4 years later. And that's when they were starting to get receiver production. And so, yeah, I do like the over either way. Over 900.5 for McBride, over 875.5 for Marv. And I like Marv for over 1,000, and I like at least 950 for, probably around 950 for Trey.
Yeah, and I think again, I'm kind of bullish on this offense. I think they're going to both go for over 1,000. The bigger jump to me this year is going to be the touchdowns. And you look at it, obviously, wide receiver touchdowns or receiving touchdowns are tough. Over 6.5 for Marv. I think he clears that with relative ease. Over 4.5 for Trey. I really do think that this year he gets in the end zone a little more. I think Marv ends up with double digits, and I think Trey ends up with over 6.
That's good. That's good. I like that. On the defense side of the ball, talking sacks. Josh Sweat. Does he hit double digits? I'm thinking, it would be fantastic if he did, because if he gets 9, it doesn't feel the same as if he gets 10. And if he gets 10, you're like, yeah, that was a really good signing.
I know. Even though it's such an arbitrary number, you're 1,000% correct. It's just because there's 2 numbers, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's 8 plus sacks for Sweat, and then I want 5 sacks plus for both Browning and Collins. Would be ideal for me.
Yeah, and I look at this and I go, where do the sacks come from this year? Because we've talked about overall the sacks, right? Like the numbers in total and what they did as a defense as a whole last year. Obviously, the biggest thing was they didn't have a guy that was the go-to. So they had 40, but they had 41 sacks overall, which was, I believe, middle of the pack, if I remember right, off the top of my head. But they came from all over. I mean, we've talked about it. 5 from Zaven, 4.5 from Dante, 3.5 from LJ, 3 from Mac, 3 from Gardeck in his 7 games, right? Lucetta had 3. Naquan Jones had 3. Kaiser White had 2.5. Xavier Thomas had 2.5. Browning had 2 in his short stint. Chris Barnes had 2. So, and then a bunch of guys with 1. So I kind of look at that and I go, maybe this is the year where we see, as a team, 45 to 50 sacks, but it's more concentrated, right? Like you're talking, like you said, like you get that 10 to 12 from Josh Sweat, and then you get, 6 to 8 from the next guys, right? Like Baron Browning and Darius Robinson, and then you get 3 to 5 each from the big
A
guys.
bunch of 5s would be really good, right?
Right.
You get
To go
8
with-
plus from Sweat. You get 5 from Zaven and Browning, 5 from Calais, 5 from Darius Robinson. You get a bunch. You get a bunch of guys going 5s, and that would put together a really nice year across the board.
And that's the thing. Again, we're talking. Here's the way I look at it. In a 17-game season, the goal should be 51 sacks because that's 3 a game, and that would be 10 more than last year. Based on what they've added, that should be a doable thing, right? 51. Yeah. It's not outrageous. It's not like we're saying, oh, they got to be like that.
The Eagles when they lost and they had their 70 whatever sacks.
Right, exactly. So like that's the way I look at it from overall. Like that's what I want to see from this group and to see them take that next step, because the reality becomes and by the way, 41 was 15th last year, tied with the Philadelphia Eagles, for those that are curious. But 51, and that's the thing, that's a super hopeful number, because that would have put them 4th last year. But to be fair, 41 or 45 to 49, those are your top 10. 63 was 1. I don't expect 63.
Well, and what would be great is the fact that if they increase on the back end, then the non-statistical sacks, the pressure rate, because the Cardinals had a really high sack to pressure rate, like conversion, because they just didn't generate pressure. And when they got pressure, they got to the quarterback. And so it would be great to see the pressure rate increase, but pressure to sack might go down because, things happen.
Exactly. So we'll see how it goes.
And then with that, let's go ahead and wrap things up. We have our week 1 preview coming later this week. I have also an opponent preview lined up with the Saints Wire's John Sigler. So we've got 2 more shows this week. Lots of content coming for you. Definitely over to revengeofbirds.com and cardswire.com for more of your written content. Until we come back later this week, that's Seth Cox. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms, so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be red, see red, and of course, Rise up, see red.